Hey everyone, I'm Daniel, this is Alex and you're watching The Superhero Show, a weekly roundup of all the barrel-scraping superhero news out there in the universe. This week we're going to be talking about Arrow, but before we get to that, you probably noticed that Chris isn't here.
No.
But last week we had a competition to win some amazing Stan Lee signed goods. Right, I'm going to get one. There it is. It's the Amazing Spider-Man 2 out on Blu-ray now, signed by Stan Lee. We also have a poster which we haven't lost. It's somewhere in the office. I'll find it for you.
Good.
Now, we're going to do the topic, the winning topic, next week when Chris is back. But it was suggested by Chris Horton, who said that we should do a show picking our most kind of inspirational goosebump moments. So we're going to do that next week, Chris. But in the meantime, we'll contact you and this stuff will be on its way to you.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, this week they released the Season 3 teaser for Arrow.
Yeah.
Now, this is sacrilegious considering I co-host a show called The Superhero Show. I've seen 2 episodes of Arrow.
Unbelievable.
Awkward. Yeah. Now, you're actually a big Arrow fan. You watch it on your daily commute.
I don't anymore because I've seen all 2 seasons of it. I don't rewatch it. I'm not that big a fan.
He really does. He just watches it on constant loop.
But I kind of got into it. I got into season 1 just as season 2 was beginning, and it was for that very reason. I had all this time on my hands. I wanted something cool to watch, and I'd heard some good things about it. Obviously, read some of the reviews on IGN. And it's actually really, really good. Yeah, because
I think it's fair to say you're a bit more of a DC guy, particularly Batman. Yeah. But you're more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy, and I think I'm probably guessed it.
Yeah.
But what is it about it that hooks you? Because sometimes you can be quite down on shows like that. Like, do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't say down. I would just say I'm critical. Yeah. Thank you very much. So the thing about Arrow is I quite like believable superheroes. Okay. I like Batman.
You like Nolan's grounded approach
within the real world, and Arrow is very much that. Of course, it's a bit of a ludicrous story. It's a billionaire playboy that gets stranded on an island and then learns to defend himself, comes back to the city that he grew up and protects it. So that, there's definitely a whiff of Bruce Wayne and Batman there. But the thing about it is, it's a bit cheesy because it's a TV superhero show, but it's just really, really well done. And over the last 2 seasons, it's really grown as a TV show, and the storylines are, you get really good kind of individual weekly episodes, but as a overall season, they pull together really, really well. And I would absolutely, if you do go and watch it from 1 all the way through, because there is stuff that hangs everything together all the way through up until the end of season 2.
I think that's the good affinity between TV and comic books, though. You can do, because it's a serialized format. And that's where TV, I think, has much more of a kinship with comic books, because you can do the big arcs and you can do the weekly stories. Yeah. So season 3, now, without too many spoilers, because I imagine not everyone's up to date like myself, why should you be interested in season 3 in particular? Is it getting better as the show goes on?
Well, certainly, if the end of season 2 is anything to go by, absolutely. Now, the main kind of protagonist for season 1 was Malcolm Merlyn. A bit of a cheesy kind of panto character.
I would never guess from the name Malcolm Merlyn.
And then season 2 was Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke, and he was kind of instrumental in the flashback story through season 1, and then it came to be he came to kind of relive his kind of past at the end of season 2. But the thing with season 3, and it was kind of announced this week that Ra's al Ghul will kind of return. Now, obviously, he is the head of the League of Assassins. Yeah. Now, the League of Assassins trained up some of the characters that we've already seen in Arrow. So his daughter Nyssa was in season 2. I won't say any more than that because if you haven't seen it, you don't want to know spoilers. The Canary was also affiliated with League of Assassins, so there's lots of ties there. And same with Malcolm Merlyn. So I think what you're seeing is you've got these kind of sub-level characters that are all in season 3 still, by the way. They're returning. They haven't been killed off or anything. But now you're getting the granddaddy of them all coming to be the big bad boss. And obviously we all know him from Batman.
Well, this is the interesting thing with Ra's al Ghul is there's a story on IGN that went around a few weeks ago that Liam Neeson expressed interest in resurrecting that role of Ra's al Ghul. But he doesn't need to do that, of course, because DC have taken a different approach to their television properties. They've kind of partitioned them in a TV universe, which is separate to the stuff they do in Man of Steel and so on. Whereas Marvel have gone the opposite route, and maybe the more ambitious and hard to manage route, which is making a unified universe on TV and on the big screen. So Daredevil, which comes out to Netflix next year, will be part of the same cinematic universe, which makes it much trickier when you like making casting decisions, because you might have to like cast the guy who needs to carry a film, not just a TV show. Now, what do you think about those approaches? Like, are you in favour of Arrow being more kind of tailored to TV and not concerned with
I think it makes it a lot, from purely a production point of view, heck of a lot easier. Because I've also been watching Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and obviously you've got things like, they refer to Nick Fury all of the time in that show. But obviously, you know, you can only have Samuel L. Jackson for a certain amount of time, and he appears at
He's doing the classic
points.
Boss.
Yes, exactly. Like, he's getting emails from him, or
working from home today.
Exactly. And so one of the problems I had with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was that I watched Captain America 2 at the wrong time. And again, without going into spoilers as to what happens there, it kind of blew open a lot of the stuff that was going to happen in S.H.I.E.L.D. before I was ready for it. And so it worked if you'd gone to the cinema and watched it when everything was working together nicely. But for me, it kind of detracted. Whereas I think the way that Arrow is doing it, and obviously we've got The Flash coming soon, and he made his first appearance in season 2. They're the same kind of characters, the same universes, but they're going off and doing their own thing. And there will be crossover, because there's crossover in the first episode of The Flash. The Arrow appears in that very, very briefly. But it's just a nice touch rather than it being so kind of bonded together that, you know, if you fail to watch everything, it kind of screws it up.
I suppose, like you're saying, logistically, it's just much easier. If you say to a team, go off, do your own thing, don't worry, you don't have to communicate and coordinate with all these people. But at the same time, do you think it just becomes slightly confusing for the viewer at large that there's going to be multiple versions of these characters perhaps running around?
Well,
or do you think...
if there was going to be an Arrow movie happening at the same time, I know that, you know, there's talks of...
Rumours,
rumours, you know, all this other stuff, and then maybe, you know, that will get confusing. But, you know, if, for example, Batman popped up in Starling City, that would be kind of weird if it wasn't Ben Affleck, I think, if they're going to wear it at the same time. But I think, you know, at the minute they're still separate enough. There's a lot of
characters to play with, isn't there? And there's also characters you get on TV that might not be quote-unquote big enough to sustain a film.
Well, that's it. You've also, even from the brief glimpse of Season 3 trailer, you've got the Atom is going to be in there. Looks like you've got the return of Count Vertigo. That's certainly what it looked like in...
You get a lot more kind of fan service stuff in TV, I think. Obviously, got more time to fill. That's why I always used to like Smallville. I used to love Smallville just for like that one Easter egg that you kind of spotted, and you're like, oh, it's great. And it actually involves no production value. It's literally saying a name, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, but you've got the whole season for that character to develop as well. Whereas in a film, you've got 2 hours to squeeze everything in. Whereas, you know, you've got much more time to play around with. So I think that kind of approach works well for TV.
Okay, right. You've almost sold me, but before we finish, I want you to pitch why I should be watching Arrow, going back to the beginning.
Well, it's a guy with a really deep voice who's amazing with a bow and arrow.
That's all I ever wanted in a
TV
show.
Also, it's going to be a lot... the tone feels a lot more lighthearted. So, you know, one of the big things in season 1 and 2 is that he doesn't kill anybody. Whereas in the season 3 trailer, we see him shooting somebody with a gun, and his kind of quip was, well, you know, I never said that I didn't know how to use a gun. So I just think that lighthearted tone combined with the list of characters.
So that lighthearted tone combined with a headshot.
Absolutely.
That is all about headshots. That is season 3 of Arrow. Now, sorry we couldn't give away a prize to everyone who wrote in last week. We got some amazing suggestions, so much so we wrote them all down. We're going to steal every single one of them for future shows, but every time we do, we'll credit the person who wrote in. Hey, we're creatively moribund, but that's the superhero show for you. Until then, we'll see you next week.